Hi everyone, it's Ileana here with card number 3 from the September card kit from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm sorry I'm a little late with this, but I've been really busy. I will talk about the stamp that I'm using in just a little bit, but for now I'll just explain what I'm doing. I made this card when I was in Texas, so basically I'm just going to recreate it using the Misty. And what I did was I ran some repositionable adhesive along the curve of that shelf, and I'm just running the stamp, I'm just curving it along that, and the removable adhesive will keep it in place. I'm using the Background Basics Super Stripes from Paper Tray Ink, and the card that I made in Texas, I did use the shelf that came in the Thine Own Shelf Be True, I think that's what it's called, from To Thine Own Shelf is what it's called, the stamp set that came in the kit. I did use that one, but I'll show you in just a second why I switched over to this stamp. So I played with the location of how I wanted to stamp this because the stamp is so long. And I'm just rubbing off the adhesive, and then I'm just scrubbing it with the Close to My Heart stamp scrubber to make sure that I got all the adhesive off. And I'm just making sure that my stamp is lined up with the original card. There's no new technique in this card. It's the same technique that I used in the previous two cards. I just think that this card is just cute, and so I thought I'd make it for you. So right here is where I'm showing you that the shelf that I used there, I didn't like the line that it left, the mark where you connect the two pieces together. And so that's why I switched over to the Paper Tray Ink one. And it's exactly the same width. And I did find that I had a little bit of adhesive left, and so I just cleaned it off, and I'm just stamping it in the smoky shadows. And I will be making multiples of this card, but I'm just going to try to show you one. So now that I have all of my shelves stamped out, I'm going to move on to the sentiment. And I could have done the title and the picture frames when I did the shelf, but I really wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just trying to focus on trying to follow that curve of the shelf. So I'm just lining up the stamps so that I could pick them all up at once. And I'm also going to stamp all of the books. And this video is going to be full of so many mistakes. I just left them all in just for you to see that I was having an off day, and I still came up with some beautiful cards. At least I think they're beautiful. And so now I'm stamping all of the pieces, all of the little books on the shelf and the frame and part of the sentiment in the same smoky shadows. And I like the smoky shadows because it's not as bold as the black, and so it's still a really nice neutral to have in the collection. And I couldn't figure out why I just wasn't getting a clean image, and it was because I needed to re-ink my ink pad because I'd been using it so much. I do like the Paper Tray ink pads, but they are small, and so you do need to re-ink them a little bit more than some of the other ink pads. But I like the way that they feel in my hand when I'm stamping on the lid of the Misty. Okay, so mistake number 1 is coming up, and I think that the first book on the shelf that is stamped in the smoky shadows is a little too far away, and so I will just wipe it clean, and I will reposition it again just so that it's touching the shelf. And luckily it was the solid book in the set, and so it's not going to affect too much. And so here I am doing the second card, and once again you're going to see that I have a little trouble getting a clean image, and so with the Misty it's really easy to go back and restamp your cards. I apologize for the glare from the lid. I didn't see that until I was editing the video. Now that I'm done with the first color, I'm going to just reposition the books again. And I did have to, I didn't go in order like I did last time where I just went across to get all the books on the shelf. I did pick specific books because of the curve and trying to get the books on the curve, so where they're leaning in towards each other on the right hand side underneath the large frame. And so you will see me repeating some of the books. And once again, this book I didn't have it lined up, and so now I'm just going to adjust it just a little bit. And so the next card I will have stamped. I didn't re-ink that one particular book because it had a design on it. I didn't want it to mess up this card, and so I just re-inked the other ones. Now I'm moving on to the next color. And the colors that I'm using are Berry Sorbet, Hawaiian Shores, Lemon Tart, Sweet Blush, and Smoky Shadows. And all of those are from Paper Tray ink. And so this color here is the Hawaiian Shores, which is, no, I'm sorry, it's the Sweet Blush. And it's the lighter pink. And here, once again, I don't know why I had trouble lining up my stamps, but this was another one of these solid books, and so it was really easy to adjust it to make sure that the book was touching the shelf, and so you can't even tell on the card. And so now the second card will be perfectly lined up. Or maybe not. This book also was misaligned, and so like I said, this card is full of mistakes, but it was easy to fix. It was only the bottom half of the card, the bottom half of that book that wasn't touching, so I only re-inked part of the book just to make it appear that it was touching. And so I'm looking to see which book I need to fill in, which colors. So I'm following the original card. And altogether I ended up with 9 cards. So the original plus 2 pieces of cardstock cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I do end up trimming those down. I went ahead and stamped them as normal, simply because I like for the images to be hanging off the edge of the card, and so I just stamp and then trim it afterwards. Since you can't really get the stamp up close to the edge, it's usually not a problem though. So now I'm moving on to the next set of books, and so it's like I said, it's the same technique as before, and the first card you make is usually the one that takes the longest because you got to line up all the books, and so you have to stamp each book one at a time. But once you get your first card done, making multiples is pretty easy, just simply by lining up your stamps on that first original card. And so now, because I am on the edge of the card, I just rotated the card front 90 degrees, and now I'm continuing to stamp all the way to the edge of the card. And you really don't need to get all that close to that edge, because you end up trimming about 1/8 all the way around off of each side, just so that you keep your scene centered. And so this part right here, this is where I had to plan the shorter books, because here the books lean into each other. So I tried to do the short books in the set. And so that's why there's so little stamps on the lid right now. Making multiples of this card was fun. I know that if I had to do each one individual, if I had to use my Fisker stamp press or just acrylic blocks, I think I probably would have only made one card. And I usually like to try to keep one card as like a recipe card. And then that way, if I need to make a quick card, I just pull out my recipe cards and then I just could whip a card out super quick, instead of having to think of an original card every time I sit down. I do a lot of cards for our church, and so I end up making multiples of the same card just to give away there. And now that I am totally done, I am going to trim all of my card fronts. And so here's all of my card fronts. And they're pretty much identical. There's just a few where I had to shift the books to get them to reach. And that very first one that didn't touch the book, what I did was I took one of those paper pencils and I just blotted the ink just to get that book to touch the shelf. And here's another part where I just was having a hard time. And so I found this little heart, and the heart, I don't know where I got it from. I'm gonna have to look. The heart is from the Sending Happy Thoughts from one of the other card kits. And sometimes these smaller stamps, they appear wider because the base is wider. And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to mess up again, and so I pulled out my Stamp-O-Majig sheet, and I'm just using it as a guide to see where this little heart's going to land. And so it took me a couple of tries, but I finally got it centered so that it would be in the middle of the frame. And the other frame, I searched for a heart that would be small enough to fit in the frame, and I found this outline from the Lawn Fawn +1 stamp set, and I didn't want another solid heart. I went with the outline one just to add the berry sorbet, and it kind of creates a visual triangle with the sentiment that's above the true story and the two hearts, so that forms a visual triangle. And so once again, here I am trying to adjust this itty bitty tiny little stamp inside, and it kept trying to stick to my finger and I just couldn't get it to sit right, but finally I got it. And so now I am trimming all the cards finally. Sorry about that. So I'm taking off 1/8 of an inch, and I couldn't decide which color to go with. In the last set I did mainly in the smoky shadows. I ended up just using some leftover cardstock from other card kits or other cards that I've made in the past where I had half sheets left. And I ended up with Lemon Tart, Coastal Cabana, and I think Candy Hearts was from the kit. There's a Smoky Shadows, and one of the light pink is also from one of the stamp kits. There was another mistake, if you caught that, where that card was too short. And so here's all the cards I made, and thanks for watching. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and also head on over to the blog. Thanks for watching.